بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وبعد. So Imam al-Ghazali, Hujjatul Islam, rahimahullah ta'ala wa radi an, he speaks about the conditions as we were mentioning, and we have arrived at the fourth condition. So he says the fourth condition for al-Jum'ah is al-Jama'ah. He says فَلَوْ صَلُّوا مُتَفَرِّقِينَ لَمْ تَصُحْ جمعتهم أو جمعتهم والمسبوق إذا أدرك الركعة الثانية جاز له الانفراد بالركعة الثانية وإن لم يدرك ركوع الثانية اقتدى ونوى الظهر وإذا سلم الإمام تممها ظهرا. So he says rahimahullah ta'ala that the condition for Jama'ah is that it has to be prayed in a congregation, and that of course is something which is understood from the previous condition, that it is a minimum of 40 individuals, and they have to pray in a Jama'ah, so they cannot pray as individuals separately. And then he says the al-masbuq. So al-masbuq in Arabic, in the framework of Islamic law, refers to the person who has missed a rak'ah or more. He says the one who has missed a rak'ah, if he misses the first rak'ah but he makes it for the second rak'ah, it's permissible for him to pray with the Imam, and then when the Imam gives the salam, he carries on the salah as Jummah. So he makes up the rak'ah that he missed and he has prayed Jummah. As for the person who misses the second rak'ah and he joins the salah after the second rak'ah, i.e. after the ruku' of the second rak'ah, then this person will join the Imam but with the intention of praying dhuhr. Yeah, so the person arrives and the Imam has prayed one rak'ah of Jum'ah. This person will intend to pray Jum'ah and will join the prayer and make up the rak'ah that he's missed. As for the person who arrives and finds that they are in the sujood of the second rak'ah, or they're in the tashahhud of the second rak'ah, this person intends to pray dhuhr and joins behind the Imam and completes his salah when the Imam gives the salam as dhuhr. So he'll pray 4 rak'at. Then he says al-khamis إن تعذر اجتماع الناس في جامع واحد جاز في جامعين أو ثلاثة بقدر الحاجة وإن لم تكن حاجة فالجمعة الصحيحة هي التي يقع فيها التحريم أولا. So now he discusses an issue which we started to discuss last week. He says if they are unable to gather in one jami', and we said the jami', the difference between a masjid and a jami' is the jami' is what? The main mosque, the central mosque, where everyone comes for Jum'ah. If they are unable to pray in the jami', it's permissible for them to pray Jum'ah in masajid or jawami'. So more than one. So for example, we have here Lewisham Islamic Center. Then we have Deptford Islamic Center. We have Greenwich Islamic Center. We have, what else? You've got one in, you've got Masajid in Peckham, in Brixton, maybe small Masajid in Lewisham Way, and so on and so forth. Is it possible for everyone that prays in all of these Masajid to come together and pray in one masjid alone? It's not possible. Lewisham, for example, is struggling with the amount of attendees that come from Lewisham alone. And I'm sure likewise the same can be said for Greenwich, the same can be said for Deptford, the same can be said for Lewisham Way, for Peckham, for Brixton, and so on and so forth. And so he says it's permissible if you cannot provide one Jum'ah for all of the people to have different Jum'at. Then he says, but if you are able to provide one Jum'ah, i.e. one masjid is enough for everyone to pray in, but you have 2 Jum'ahs in 2 masjids or 2 jami'as, he says the one who starts the tahreem first is the one that is correct. So let's say we started our tahreem here, tahreematul salah, we started at 12:01, and another masjid started at 12 o'clock. And both our masjids have the capacity to allow for the number praying in both to pray in one. Which of the 2 is correct? Our masjid, for example. And in London, that's not the case. Maybe in some parts of the UK. But again, this mas'ala, this issue goes back to when there is a khalifa, when there is a khilafah and you have a leader for the Muslims. Today we don't have one. And so this issue is an issue which would be looked at in more detail and contextualized by the ulama, the scholars of Islam. He says, السادس, the sixth condition, الخطبتان وبينهما جلسة خفيفة. So he says the sixth condition for the validity of the Jummah, which differs from the conditions for the other salawat, is that the Jummah salah has to be preceded by a khutbah. And the khutbah contains two khutbahs, the first and the second. And between the two, there is a sitting. And some parts of it are sunnah, some parts of it are wajib, etc. And that's looked at in more detail in the books of fiqh. And some of the ulama, they will say that the khutbatan, the two khutbahs, replace the two rak'ahs that have been taken away from the dhuhr prayer. So rather than have 4 rak'ahs, you have 2 khutbahs and 2 rak'ahs. Some people, they like to come for the salah alone. So they'll miss the Jummah khutbah. So they know when the salah is going to take place. For example, here the salah usually takes place at 1:15 or 1:30. And so they will avoid coming to the khutbah and they will come and they'll pray outside just in time for the salah. But for those people, there's no reward, number one. And number two, they lose out. For their own personal benefit, they lose out. The purpose behind the Jummah is the reminder. The reminder is important. And it can change your day, can change your week, can change your month, in fact, can change your life. I know of individuals that have attended a khutbah and the khutbah changed their lives for the better. And so it's important that, as we were speaking about last week, the glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Jummah, it's important as well that we give the khutbah its due respect. And we'll come to this issue later, adab al-Jummah, shortly inshallah. But one of the reasons why we are not able to benefit from the khutbah today, even if it's long, let's say it's a 30-minute khutbah like our one, which is longer than many other masajid. One of the reasons why we cannot benefit from the khutbah is because we have replaced education with entertainment. And so if the education is not entertaining, we don't have the capacity to bear it. We want things to be entertaining. We want the khutbah to be amazing. We want the khatib to be eloquent, and so on and so forth. Yes, there should be a level of standard when it comes to the khutbah, but the believer is benefited by the Quran and the Sunnah, wherever the Quran and the Sunnah is found and however they are found. Even if the person is not eloquent, but the message is strong, the person finds benefit. But today, because we're used to the slick video forms of da'wah that we watch on our phones and laptops and tablets, etc., we're not able to sit for 30 minutes and listen. And likewise in the education system as well, you find the same thing, where in the education system now, previously or previous techniques that were found to work over centuries, such as memorizing, have been replaced with what? With apps and with computer programs and so on and so forth. And this is problematic. It's problematic. If you have to be stimulated and entertained to learn, you will not learn very much. Learning can be very boring. That's a part of the learning process. A part of the learning process is to develop discipline and the ability to be patient upon the difficulty of learning, memorizing, etc. If you want to memorize the Quran, there is no entertaining way to memorize the Quran. You cannot be entertained whilst you memorize the Quran. You have to sit and you have to repeat it over and over and over and over and over again until you're bored of the page, until you're bored of sitting there and repeating. That's the process of memorization. And a person may say, how can you become bored of the Quran? It's not the Quran that you're bored of. It's the repetition of the same page over and over and over and over again. Likewise, hadith. You cannot memorize hadith without being bored by repeating it over and over and over and over and over again. You will find satisfaction in it, definitely. But I'm talking about intellectual stimulation. It can become boring. Likewise, you want to understand a text. You have to repeat it, and you have to revise it, and you have to repeat it again, and you have to revise it again. And it becomes boring. That's the only way to learn properly and correctly. But we've replaced learning processes with processes which are more entertaining and more stimulating. But in the long run, that's harmful to us. And so it's very important that for the sake of our discipline, when I go to the khutbah, whether the khatib is boring, eloquent, entertaining, or not, I give my full attention to the khatib and to the khutbah, and I try to benefit from what is being said, regardless of who's saying it. Why? Because that's my issue of respect. I'm respecting the Quran and the Sunnah, and I'm respecting the sanctity of the day and the sanctuary of the khutbah, of the Jummah process. I don't say to myself, oh, that khutbah is boring, that khatib is not a good khatib, I can't listen. No, you can't listen because you have a problem. It's nothing to do with the khatib. And you see this in the elders, those that are older than us. Why is it they can show respect, but the youngers can't? Although not all of the elders and elders, unfortunately. As I mentioned, I've seen some of the uncles reading newspapers during the khutbah. But replace that with smartphones. I've seen young brothers and they're playing FIFA on a smartphone whilst the khutbah is taking place. And that's a big problem, because that shows us an issue with the heart. The previous generations, they would listen to a khutbah in a language they don't understand, but they would sit still and they would have respect and they wouldn't move and they wouldn't talk out of this respect for the sanctity of the day. Today we complain because the khatib is not entertaining enough. That's a problem. Learning is not entertaining. And if you need to be entertained to learn, you're not going to learn much in life, unfortunately. Life is not a YouTube video. But that's what we've become accustomed to, which is a big problem. And it went from 1 hour lectures to 30-minute lectures to 10 minutes to 1 minute. Now people can't even concentrate for 1 minute. It has to be half a minute. Now 10 seconds. What are you going to get in 10 seconds? A few words? So we have to develop the ability to focus and to learn, etc., and to show respect for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it means sitting there for 2 hours. There's a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, speaking about Yawm al-Qiyamah. The Prophet ﷺ, he came out after Fajr. He stood up on the minbar after Fajr, and he spoke from Fajr until Dhuhr. And then they prayed Dhuhr. Then he stood back on the minbar from Dhuhr until Asr. Then after Asr, he stood back on the minbar until Maghrib. From Dhuhr until Maghrib, speaking about what was going to happen until the end of time. Look at the respect of the Sahaba sitting for that entire day. Why? To benefit and to learn. But today we don't have the ability to sit even for an hour. Many of us, unfortunately. We can sit and watch a sports match for an hour and a half, but we can't listen to a khutbah for 30 minutes. We can sit and watch men kicking a ball on some grass into a net for an hour and a half, but we can't listen to قال الله وقال الرسول for half an hour. That's the reality, which shows there's a problem with the heart. Because if we were stimulated by the Quran and the Sunnah itself, it wouldn't matter where it's coming from. It wouldn't matter whether the person is entertaining or not. Then he says آداب الجمعة يستحب الغسل يومها استحبابا مؤكدا وذهب بعض العلماء إلى وجوبه قال عليه الصلاة والسلام غسل الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم. So he says from the adab of Jummah now, so the etiquettes of Jummah, he says that it is mustahab to perform ghusl. So ghusl being the ritual shower or bath that a person would take, and there's a difference of opinion, is the ghusl for the day or is it for the salah itself? But it's mustahab anyway. And he says it's istihbaban mu'akkadan. So it's an emphasized sunnah and recommendation. And then he says وَذَهَبَ بَعْضُ الْعُلَمَاءِ إِلَى وُجُوبِهِ. Some of the ulama, they took the opinion that it is wajib. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said the ritual bathing of Jummah is wajib upon every person who has reached the age of puberty. Then he says وقال عمر لعثمان رضي الله تعالى عنهما لما دخل وهو يخطب أهذه الساعة منكرا عليه ترك البكور فقال ما زدت بعد أن سمعت الأذان على أن توضأت وخرجت فقال والوضوء أيضا وقد علمت أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يأمر بالغسل. Then al-Ghazali رحمه الله, he says وقد عرف جواز ترك الغسل بوضوء عثمان رضي الله تعالى عنه. So he mentions that Uthman came to the masjid whilst Umar was giving the khutbah. And Umar, he said to Uthman, at this time you're coming? And Uthman replied, all I did was I heard the adhan, I performed my wudu, and I made my way to the masjid for Jummah. And he said, likewise, not only are you coming at this time, but also you've only just performed wudu. You haven't performed ghusl. And so Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he says from this narration, we take that ghusl is mustahab and not wajib. Why? Because if it was wajib, Uthman radhiallahu anh would have performed it. And so Uthman's understanding of this hadith shows us that it is to be considered mustahab rather than fard wajib. Then he says, the second etiquette of Jummah, az-zina. He says, وهي مستحبة في هذا اليوم وهي ثلاثة الكسوة والنظافة وتطيب الرائحة. He says, az-zina, so beautification, is from the etiquettes of Jummah, as we spoke about last week. And he says it is in three things. Number one, al-kiswa. So al-kiswa is basically that which you wear, your outer layer of clothing. Number two, al-nidafa, cleanliness. Number three, وَتَطْيِيبُ الرَّائِحَةِ, and the purification of smell. So basically applying perfume and ridding one's body of any foul smells, etc. He says, أما النظافة فبالسواك وحلق الشعر وقلم الظفر وقص الشارب. So he says, as for النظافة, cleanliness, it is by using the miswak, so cleaning one's mouth, teeth, وحلق الشعر, and likewise trimming one's hair, i.e. the hair that should be removed from the body, and trimming one's nails, and trimming one's mustache. So it should be a practice that every Friday a person, at the very least every Friday, a person trims their mustache, removes any bodily hair that needs to be removed, and trims their nails, and cleans themselves properly, etc. As for the miswak, of course, you should be using it daily anyway, brushing your teeth daily. He's not saying only brush your teeth on Fridays, but he's saying that that's something which is emphasized prior to attending the masjid for Jummah. And likewise, the ulama, they say that al-ghusl is mustahab for every large gathering that you attend. So every large gathering that we attend, it's recommended that we have a shower. Today, we shower often anyway, a lot more often than previous generations would shower or bath. Why? Because we have an abundance of water. To some extent, perhaps some people shower too much, where it becomes extravagance, overusing water, etc. For example, some people, they shower twice a day, which is too much. It's not healthy for your body, and also you're wasting a lot of water like that. Depending on what you do with your day, if you're working heavy lifting, that's understandable. But I'm saying the average person. Then he says, وَلْيَتَطَيَّبْ فِي هَذَا الْيَوْمِ بِأَطْيَبِ طِيبٍ عِنْدَهُ ويوصل الرائحة إلى مشام الحاضرين في جواره وأحب طيب الرجال ما ظهر ريحه وخفي لونه. Then he says, as for the perfume, a person should use on Jum'ah the best perfume that he has. So a custom of some of the ulama and the awliya is to have a particular thobe that they will wear on Jum'ah, and a particular perfume that they would use on Jum'ah, and they would keep it for Jum'ah, and likewise Eid. And so, for example, oud or amber, or any of the other expensive types of utur, although they're not much appreciated in the West. So a lot of brothers, they don't really like oud. It's an acquired taste. Likewise, amber, it's not really something which many people like. It's an acquired kind of taste. Misk, for example, wird. So all of these are very expensive perfumes, and they are perfumes which should be kept for Jum'ah if possible. Or if it's an expensive perfume that you prefer. Although preferably we should avoid using perfumes that are the spray ones with alcohol in them. Why? Because all four schools of fiqh, they say that alcohol is impure, it's najis. And so if we're spraying that onto our clothing, it's problematic. So it's ideal to avoid them to the best of our ability. It might not be possible for some, because they might not want to use the utur, etc. But it's a good custom to get used to avoiding areas of khilaf. Some of the ulama, they contemporary ulama, they say it's not impure, etc., because it's a different type of alcohol and so on and so forth. it's a discussion which is related to fiqh. And he says, وَيُوصِلُ الرَّائِحَةَ إِلَى مَشَامِ الْحَاضِرِينَ فِي جَوَارِهِ. And the smell of the perfume should reach his neighbors. So when he comes to sit down, those around him should be able to smell the perfume. And this is the quality of expensive perfumes such as oud, ambar, wird, and others, misk, for example. So it's preferable to try to acquire a good perfume and to use it on Jummah. And then he says, the most beloved or the best of perfumes for men is that which its smell is strong, but its color is light, i.e. the color doesn't show. And the opposite is true for women. The best of perfumes for women is that which the smell is lesser and the color is more. So our times differ because perfumes nowadays, they're not really colorful. We extract perfumes, etc. Whereas previously that wasn't the case. But for women, they shouldn't be using perfumes and coming to Jummah. It's for men, as of the prohibition for women using perfume and leaving their houses. Then he says, وَأَمَّا الْكِسْوَةِ فَأَحَبُّهَا الْبَيَاضُ مِنَ الثِّيَابِ وَلَا يَلْبَسُ مَا فِيهِ شُهْرَةٌ وَلُبْسُ السَّوَادِ لَيْسَ مِنَ السُنَّةِ وَلَا فِيهِ فَضْلٌ. So then he says, أَمَّا الْكِسْوَةِ. So al-kiswa being that which you adorn yourself with outwardly, your outer layer of clothing. He says the best of clothing for a man, the best of outer clothing for a man is that which is white, i.e. a white thobe or white clothing, etc. He says, وَلَا يَلْبَسُ مَا فِيهِ شُهْرَةٌ. And a person should not wear that which would be considered libas al-shuhra. What is libas al-shuhra? It's basically clothing which would lead people to point fingers at you, lead you to stand out. So an example, in the UK, it's not customary for a man to wear a bright pink thobe. It's not customary. So if a man came to the masjid in a bright pink thobe, it could be considered libas al-shuhra. Why? Because people are going to point to the person. Maybe not literally, but they're going to stand out. And that's something which is prohibited in Islam. In Islam, it is prohibited for you to wear clothing which leads to the people pointing fingers at you, i.e. it makes you stand out unnecessarily. And the sunnah is to wear the clothing of the people as long as the clothing of the people does not contradict the framework of Islam. So for example, the actual sunnah here would be to wear the clothing of the people, but not tight clothing. For women to wear clothing which does not reveal their body is moderate, and so on and so forth. Likewise for men. As for the thobe, has the thobe become customary in the West today? It has. So the thobe has become customary due to the Muslims. And so wearing a thobe can be considered customary. But perhaps in some parts of the UK, where there are no Muslims, it would be considered makruh, disliked for you to go and wear a thobe in that particular area. Let's say a small town or village where there are no Muslims living there and nobody wears a thobe, and you turn up in a white thobe and a turban. That's problematic. Someone may say, no, I'm going to do that for the sake of da'wah. Okay, maybe, because people are going to inquire, oh, why are you wearing these clothes? But as a practice, it's not something which would be recommended. Why? Because it becomes libas al-shuhra. And we cannot ascribe any particular clothing per se to the Prophet ﷺ. There are estimations, but we do not have an item of clothing today which is worn, which we can say is the clothing of the Prophet ﷺ. And that's why when you go to the Muslim world, you find the Muslims wear their own style of clothing, but it follows the framework of Islam, i.e. it is modest, it's not tight, it doesn't draw attention, and so on and so forth. So then he says, and wearing black is not considered to be from the Sunnah, nor is there any virtue to wearing black. And again, the color of clothing is contextual. It's contextual because in some countries, the culture is to wear certain colors. Especially, for example, if you wear white hair, it becomes dirty very quickly. And so you don't want to walk around with a dirty thobe. So perhaps you wear different colors. The main point is that you wear a thobe which is presentable, It's a thobe which has some quality to it, and it shows that you are respecting the sanctity, the sanctuary of the day of Jummah. Whether it's a thobe, whether it's a suit, whatever it might be that you wear. But it's important to try to acquire the custom of wearing the best of our clothing on Jummah, when we attend the masjid for the Jummah Salah and the Jummah Khutbah. Then he says, البكور إلى الجامع وينبغي أن يكون في سعيه إليها خاشعا متواضعا قاصدا للمبادرة إلى جواب نداء الله عز وجل إلى الجمعة. He says, one of the etiquettes is going early to the masjid. So going early to the masjid, and the person who is going to the masjid should be in a state of khushu', in a state of reflection, consideration of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. متواضعا, he is in a state of humility. قاصدا للمبادرة إلى جواب نداء الله, and the purpose for him leaving his house at the early time is the intention to respond to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says رحمه الله, قال عليه الصلاة والسلام من راح إلى الجمعة في الساعة الأولى فكأنما قرب بدنة ومن راح في الساعة الثانية فكأنما قرب بقرة ومن راح في الساعة الثالثة فكأنما قرب كبشا أقرا ومن راح في الساعة الرابعة فكأنما أهدى دجاجة ومن راح في الساعة الخامسة فكأنما أهدى بيضة فإذا خرج الإمام حضرت الملائكة يستمعون الذكر. He mentions the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the hadith which is used to show that a person should attend Jum'ah as early as possible. He says, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever attends Jum'ah in the first hour, then it's as if he has sacrificed a camel for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, i.e. he has the reward of sacrificing a camel. And whoever attends in the second hour, as if he has sacrificed a cow. And whoever attends in the third hour, it's as if he has sacrificed a horned ram. And whoever attends in the fourth hour, it's as if he has sacrificed a chicken. And whoever attends in the fifth hour, as if he has sacrificed an egg. So most of us, we're sacrificing eggs. And an egg is still worth something, but it's not like the camel. Then he says, فَإِذَا خَرَجَ الْإِمَامُ حَضَرَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الذِّكْرَ. And if the Imam comes out, i.e. he climbs the minbar, the angels sit down, they stop writing the reward. They sit down to listen to the reminder of the Imam. And so if you arrive later than the start of the khutbah, you don't have the reward of sacrificing anything on that day. How do you contextualize this? And what is meant by the first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour, fifth hour? Because sa'a in Arabic doesn't actually mean a 60-minute hour. Sa'a means a portion of time. And some of the ulama, they say it starts from the break of dawn. Some of the ulama, they say it starts from sunrise. The issue we have is that our masajid don't open until roughly an hour before the salah. And so how do we go early? فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. We try to arrive as early as possible. If the masjid opens at 12 o'clock, I'm here at 12 o'clock. And I take my place at 12 o'clock with the intention of being from those who attend the earliest. And then he mentions وَدَخَلَ ابْنُ مَسْعُودٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ إِلَى الْجُمْعَةِ فَوَجَدَ ثَلَاثَةَ نَفَرٍ سَبَقُوهُ فَقَالَ رَابِعُ أَرْبَعَةٍ وما رابع أربعة من البكور ببعيد فكأنه اختم لذلك وجعل يقول معاتبا نفسه وما رابع أربعة من البكور ببعيد. So Ibn Mas'ud, he attended a Jum'ah and he found there were 3 people who had beat him to attending the masjid before him. And so he started to say the 4th of 4, i.e. I am the 4th of 4. And as if he was saddened by this. He was aggrieved by the fact that he was not earlier than those 3 that came before him. And he says, وَجَعَلَ يَقُولُ مُعَاتِبًا نَفْسَهُ. He started to say, in a way, rebuking himself. The 4th of 4, and the 4th of 4 is not too far away from being early. And this hadith, there is a variation of it. If it's not the same hadith itself, I'm not sure, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that your place in closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be in accordance to the time within which you used to attend the Jummah. So those who arrive right at the end, they will be at the end of the lines in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so just thinking about that, if it means on Yawm al-Qiyamah that I will be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if I attend earlier, is it not something to try to endeavor to achieve? It is. If you go to Muslim countries, you will find individuals that are waiting in the masjid at duha time. So as soon as the sun rises, they attend the masjid and they sit there for 4 to 5 hours waiting for the khutbah. I know an individual, he used to complete the Quran. He used to recite the Quran from the beginning until the end, between Fajr and Jummah on Fridays. 4 to 5 hours he would complete the Quran. And you'll just see him reading the Quran from beginning to end, not bored by the Quran. For us, we get bored after 10, 15, 20 minutes. Why? Because we become used to the education, the stimulation, etc. So we should try from this week, i.e. from next Jummah, try to attend the Jummah as early as possible. If the doors open at 12, I'm there at 12. Why? With the intention that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, I will be from those that are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of reckoning. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He rewards us by our intention. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are by their intentions. So if I'm here at 12 o'clock because the doors open at 12 o'clock, but if the doors were to open earlier than that, I would be here earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. And bi-idhnillah, Allah will give me the reward of being from those who attend in the first hour. And in fact, there is an opinion that the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth portion of time, i.e. hour, they take place after the zawal. And so perhaps, according to that opinion, I can be from the first that enter in the first portion of time and be from those that have sacrificed a camel. And then he goes on to speak about hay'atul dukhul, and what you do when you enter into the masjid. So we'll stop there inshallah and continue next week bi-iznillah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad.